Good Wednesday to you, everybody in Com 702. Yikes, welcome to week boom, bam, 14. How's everybody doing? We are motoring along. Stay motivated, stay caffeinated. What do we have here? The I'd hike that mug, and I would hike that, and I probably will, wherever that is. Okay, how you doing? We are a week away from really having nothing else that we do because there's not work in the last week. It gives you a chance to focus in on your papers. All right, so we're coming right down to the wire. Hang in there, everybody. The semester is almost finished. You are doing great. First things first, to start off, I am really, really sorry. Mea culpa. I should have posted this video last week. I don't have any other excuse except for I just forgot. How could I forget you? I don't know. Shame on me. But I did. Not that I didn't forget you. I just forgot about posting the video. So this is coming a little bit late, and Dr. Brown will post video for Forum 13 probably tomorrow or Friday. Much better. So you'll be all caught up. Okay, before we get to the questions from Forum number 12, which is what we're covering here, let's just do a couple of quick reminders. Your papers are due on the 23rd. All right. So what's today? The 12th. That's a week and and change in 1, 2, 3, 4 days. And then you have your final exam in the week of the 29th. Now, let me encourage you to start prepping for this final exam, even while you're finishing your papers. Go back through the discussion boards, go back through the readings as represented in the discussion boards. Make sure that you understand the terminology and the concepts, because you'll be asked to fill in some blanks, even provide a short answer or two, maybe. And you're going to want to have a command of the material beyond just sort of oh yeah, this one's this and that one's that, which is really the larger point here for the class. And the exam is cumulative. If you have any other specific questions about the test, please feel free to email myself or Dr. Brown, and we will get back to you as soon as we can. Okay. All right. Let's take a look at the questions and your responses for week 12. That is, you read selection from Fowler. And, probably one of the more relaxed weeks in terms of questions that you've had for a while, but a really important one. I'm just moving some stuff here out of the way. Because so many problems that you might encounter doing quantitative research can be eliminated before they occur, depending on how you put your survey together. And I was just talking with someone this morning, going over their survey during my office hour. And, some of the things that we touch on in these questions make central to your approach to quantitative research. Okay, so let's get into it. Let's take a look at question number 1. What 2 important insights have you learned from Fowler's book, the Fowler book, about survey research, and how might you use this type of method in the future? Okay, Shonda, you went first. Let's take you first. In chapter 7, the most important insights I learned were defining questions and designing the format and layout of survey instruments. Absolutely. I help with surveys sometimes for companies, and one of the big issues, the numbers that I look at carefully, is the drop-off number. How far along in the survey till people just go, I can't do this anymore, and they bail out. Because although that gives you data on the front end, it doesn't give you data on the back end, and particularly if that crucial demographic data comes on the back end, like what's your gender, what's your age, what's your education level. That is things that make the questions that you typically ask on the front end meaningful. Because remember, we're talking about real people here. All right, this isn't like we're picking flowers or sorting rocks into piles according to size. We're talking about real folks, and so real folks, depending on different groups, behave differently. Well, if they drop out of your survey before they get to that bit, that's no good for you. So excellent point, Shonda. In the future, as we become more proficient, Fowler suggests how to format questions that are geared to survey what we're wanting to conduct. I'm assuming what you're asking, and I'll get to that here in a second because you're making a good point. In other words, Fowler was saying, not to waste time on questions that do not relate to what I'm going to be studying. You could not have hit the nail harder on the head, Shonda. That is excellent. Before you design question 1, okay, forget about the survey, just even the first question. Get it very clear in your head. What are you trying to find out? What are you asking? What are you trying to find out? And remember, you do not have to write the Encyclopedia Britannica concerning pick your topic. All right, the person that I was helping this morning is taking a look at how generative AI like ChatGPT is impacting people that are non-native English speakers in schools, and using for applications to get into schools. And if they get in but their English is not really super duper, what does it mean for them now that they have to write papers? This sort of thing. Okay, there's a lot of different questions within that general area that he could ask. All right. But what you want to do when you run a survey before you design the survey is be very clear about what you're finding out, because you do not want excessive questions, things that are not going to be of any use to you. Now, the other side of the coin is ask questions that will generate data that help you answer the questions that you have. So try to think of it as like a funnel. You start up here with sort of a general area of interest. I'm interested in finding out about, like, I directed a dissertation once, a Regent student from Ghana, and he was interested in finding out how does the technology WhatsApp, the social media application, how does that impact people's church attendance and their faith life? Because during COVID in Ghana, they shut down the churches, like in a lot of places, and pastors began to use social media applications like WhatsApp to start communicating with their parishioners, with their congregants. How does this change their experience of church? Well, that's a big area. Okay, so then try to focus. Okay, what experience with church? Well, he was very interested in people that were using WhatsApp for prayer. Okay, great. Like in what way? What kind of images do they attach, like emojis, when they're expressing prayer? What, do a content analysis? What kind of wording? How can you narrow that down? Then he narrowed it down again. Well, how does using WhatsApp affect their belief in intercessory prayer? That is, if I say, I'm praying for you because, or you ask me, please pray for me. If you ask me face to face, or if you ask me over WhatsApp, is there a statistically significant difference between whether I believe that intercessory prayer is effective on a social media app or in person? So narrow that down. Okay, so start with the big area and then try to narrow it down and get very clear about what you want to find out. And then you can use that to design the questions that go in your survey. And as you point out here, Shonda, excellent answer. Don't ask questions that don't pertain to what you're trying to find out. All right. Okay, good answer. Question number 2. Please provide a web link to a published academic article that you believe is a good example of good survey research study. What did you learn from the study about survey research? A lot of you did answer this, and it was some very, very interesting stuff. Timothy, I thought you in particular, I think you went first on this one too, so let's take you. Politics has always been a way of people to express their opinions and feelings by how they vote. That's very much true, especially in the feelings part. When people consider what policies to vote for, or which person to hold a particular political position, they often have their own ways of preparing or coming to a conclusion for themselves. The below article follows a study in which people are measured based on their own ways of coming to political decision making regarding voting. And you know what? I teach a course in quantitative research for political science over in the School of Government, and researching, poli-sci and questions around why people do what they do as voters is really interesting, because it's really challenging. It's sort of like the difference between studying the weather and trying to make a prediction over a whole region of the country, as opposed to sticking your head outside and is saying, oh yeah, okay, it looks like it's going to rain today. All right, because there are so many other factors and variables that can pop up. Okay, as it stands, people have their own personal family, historical, and a variety of reasons for voting and the ways they do. I learned that this kind of research is much more of a mix between quantitative and qualitative, and it is. Now, remember, we're focusing on quantitative here in this class, and quantitative is really good at telling us that something is going on. It is not so good because you have to get into so many granular questions at telling us why the thing is going on. To get to the why, it really helps sometimes just to sit down with those people, some of the people who took your survey, and ask open-ended questions, not leading questions. You don't want bias to creep in there. You don't want any errors. Open-ended questions about what it is they do and why it is they do. And then you put those two together and you can come out with a much, much clearer picture than as opposed to, the two of them apart. Okay. All right. Good answer. And a lot of you had a lot of very interesting answers for that question. Question number 3. What have you learned about survey research that will help you use this type of research more effectively in the future? Amanda, I like what you're doing here. And by the way, Amanda, you've been doing some really, really interesting research. Amanda and I have gone over her surveys and her studies, and some interesting stuff going on. Okay, so there are many things I've learned about survey research that will help me in the future. I've learned about different errors that can occur in different types of surveys that are beneficial to my research. I love quantitative research, and all the studies I've done in the past have been that type of research. Everything I learned this year can help me improve my research even more. Okay. So I can publish one day. What do you mean one day? You could, let's, come on, folks. And Amanda, let's get on this. You could be publishing tomorrow. I mean, maybe not tomorrow because you've got stuff to do. Okay, but you get what I mean. One of the most important things I've learned was different types of testing I can do. I should write my research questions in a way I can solve them. If they are written in a way I do not understand the test to analyze them, then I should rewrite them in a way I can. Okay. It feels like you're kind of circling the drain here a little bit, but I get where you're going, and it's to a really important point. So thank you for raising that. Look, folks, be good to yourself as researchers. All right. If you don't understand and you have a really hard time wrapping your head around, say, factor analysis and trying to reduce a whole bunch of variables down to a new one. Okay. That's, it could be a tricky bit. Okay. Don't set up a series of questions that have to be answered with a test that you don't understand. I've read and used and cited some very significant and broad-based, that is, in terms of the number in the data set, research that does nothing more than t-tests. And you can do that. I mean, we were doing that like what, week 2? Is there a statistical difference between the means of a couple of groups doing the same thing? You can do that. Okay. So design your questions to be answered by tests that you understand. Now, for these other ones, if you're not, real comfortable and real familiar, okay, sort of go through the tests that you are comfortable and familiar with. And then when you start to get into the sort of that, I'm not sure, wherever that line is for you, if it's somewhere past ANOVAs, or you start getting into regression analysis, or you're not sure the difference between, say, a t-test and a chi-square. Okay, right at that line, on the other side, the fuzzy side, start your research. That is your continued learning to explain it to you. Go back and the videos are going to be here. Go back and watch the videos that Dr. Brown and I did. Watch Andy Field videos. I mean, some of you click with him, some of you not. That's okay. There are a lot of statistics channels on YouTube that will go over this stuff. If you don't want to keep paying the money for SPSS, there are other stats engines that you can utilize that are inexpensive and some are even free, that you can do the same stuff. Okay, so find out what tests you understand, design questions that can be answered with those tests, and then design surveys to generate data to answer those tests. And then for the other tests that you're not really clear on, that you don't understand, spend your time, learning up. Is that the word? Is that the phrase? How to learn up to something? Learn up to those tests. All right? And you know, that's how we grow. Okay, good answer, Amanda. Question number 4. What is one advantage and one disadvantage of collecting data online? Oh, I like this question. Cassiopeia, let's take you. According to Fowler, one advantage is that large number of peoples can be recruited via the internet to participate in surveys and other research studies. This is even more true today, as websites like SurveyMonkey and Amazon's Mechanical Turk were designed solely to collect data for survey research. The disadvantage, however, is that even though survey technology has become more sophisticated, so have the bots. And these, you know, this is a term for an automated program that crawls around and gets into, you know, all kinds of places online. People use to infiltrate those sites as a means of making money without proper contribution. And there are people that, you know, and I actually, I'll tell you, and you're onto something really important here, Cassiopeia. For survey online survey platforms, that's the word I'm looking for, that offer people, you know, pay to play. I don't use them. Now I know that some others do, and this is me. Okay, some you know, other researchers might disagree with me, but there are some that, you know, like online, come and fill this out, and you get so many points that you can turn into game purchase on the platform Rust or whatever. Okay, because there are people that do use bots to rack up surveys to get the goodies to go do whatever they want to do, or buy skins in their favorite game or whatever. All right. You know, that can be problematic for your data. So you don't want just a bunch of stuff in there that's gonna screw up with, you know, the histograms, like it's like somebody stomped on the middle of it or something. And the way to head that off, Cassiopeia, is to stay away from platforms that incentivize users with any kind of a quid pro quo. You know, you take a survey and then you get this. Okay, because you point out there's always a possibility of getting bot responses that skew the survey data depending on the researcher's experience or lack thereof. The survey creation distribution, that skew could be profound and could create either type 1 or type 2 errors. That's an excellent point. You know, the way I circumvent that is I just don't use them. These that offer goodies for survey takers. What I do instead is, if I'm not getting a response, you know, then I go back and I take a look at the surveys. Like, how did I ask this in a way that was clear? Is it too long? Is it circulating within the populace that this is relevant to? You know, so if I'm asking, like this person I was helping earlier today with their survey on Chat GPT, and they wanted to know, you know, what students thought about this, I wouldn't take that survey to an elementary school, or maybe I should. Maybe they're already that far ahead, the little rascals. You know, maybe a junior high or a high school, or maybe a college, because I might just get a you know, sort of a what low response rate if I'm talking to fourth graders. Okay. Alan, though, you make an important point here, so we're going to throw you into the mix. One of the advantages of clicking on data online is the ease and access. Excuse me, large pool of participants. Yes, we understand that. One of the disadvantages, and here's an important point that you raise, Alan, of collecting data online is the potential for selection bias. The sample of participants may be limited to those who have access to the internet and are willing to participate in online surveys, are motivated to provide accurate responses. And that is such an excellent point. And you know, when you get out of the developed world and you get into the developing world, now many people all over, in places that might surprise you, have access to the internet, but the way they get there is not cost effective for them. Many countries that people have to buy internet access by the minute. And as a consequence, you know, they're not going to want to spend time filling out your survey. You know, what you think about Arnold Schwarzenegger and his influence on people, you know, voting or what have you, may mean absolutely nothing to them, or they just couldn't care. They could not care less. So it tends to skew your data. Now, how do you get around that? You go, well, you know, I can't travel to Uzbekistan to give out a paper survey. Okay, fine. So when you write it up, make sure that you tell your readers, this is, you know, where the data sample came from. And then poke around, do a little research, see if there's anybody who has been in Uzbekistan and done research, that there's any skew that creeps in for people that are online and not online? Is it an age thing? Is it an education thing? Is it an economic thing? What sort of biases get baked into those different descriptors in the data? And then you just acknowledge it. All right. And if it poses a challenge to the external validity of your conclusions, like, okay, this could be applied to everybody, then just say so. All right. You save yourself a lot of trouble as a researcher if you are, the clearer and plainer you are with your readers about how you did what you did, where you got the data, and what therefore the limitations of your conclusions are. If you do that right on the upfront, and that's good research. In fact, when you see survey data, that the first thing that I encourage people to do, in fact, I insist, is all right, start asking the question, what's the data set? Who's in this survey? You see this in politics all the time. All the time. They'll say, blankety blank of people surveyed, 1,000 people surveyed, they don't like President Trump, or they think he should be arrested immediately, or whatever. And I'm not playing politics. I'm just giving you something that that CNN would do. Yeah, okay, great. What's the data pool? How many people in there are card carrying members of political parties that don't like this person or the party that he belongs to from the get-go? Is there any statistically significant difference in in the people that took the survey that would skew it? Did they correct for that? All right. So, you are going to run into these limitations. Then, just spend a little bit of time sort of noodling out what they are and acknowledge them to your readers. And that's how you that's how you do good survey work. Okay. All right, everybody, continue to do your great work. All right. I apologize for the delay in this. Remember your papers and your final exam. And if you have any questions about either one of those, get in touch with me. Okay. Especially those in my group. And have a wonderful, wonderful rest of the week. We think about you. We pray for you. And we'll see you on Blackboard. God bless. Bye-bye.